a year and a half after undertaking the project, concludes and comes out with a companion book to the theme of these are the original writings upon which the book of Matthew is based. And indeed, in this book, this man is called Emmanuel, as it was foretold in Isaiah and briefly mentioned once in Matthew, the quote-unquote prophet or savior of the times would be called. And there are similarities and vast differences such that James Deardorff has said that the Talmud Emmanuel resolves over 200 inconsistencies found, over 300, pardon me, in the book of Matthew.
Michael, we're going to have to cut it off and take a break here. Jerry in Cincinnati, thanks for that call. We're going to take more of your calls when we come back on Coast to Coast AM. Welcome back to Coast AM. I'm George Knapp. We have a few minutes left with Michael Horn to talk about the Billy Meier case, and we'll take your calls in just a moment, but I'm going to ask my question about the assassination attempts, Michael. I mean, I've covered a lot of the mob guys who ran the streets of Las Vegas, and if they tried to kill somebody 19 times and didn't get the job done, they would have been in a lot of trouble.
Sure. Well, actually, there haven't been 19. There have been 21 attempts in Meier.
21.
Perhaps one of the best answers is, and you know Wendell Stevens, and
sure.
Wendell was sitting with Billy when one of the earliest assassination attempts, not the first one, actually his first one was in 1964 in India, but one of the first ones in Switzerland. And he said he was sitting with Billy, and suddenly Billy, fell forward onto Wendell, he just fell towards him. They heard a cracking sound simultaneously. They didn't know what had happened. Billy didn't know why he lurched. And when they got up and looked around, there was a bullet hole in the wall right where Meier's head would have been. And what we're told in this case is that for some time, because they knew Meier would become quite a target, he was protected. He was, given additional help by his Plejaran friends. And then, of course, it was turned over to him. He had to become responsible for himself. The core of this case, really, you come down to it, it's about self-responsibility. It's not even about UFOs. And Meier had to take responsibility for protecting himself and being alert and aware. I've talked to witnesses to 12 of the attempts, people who were with him. And it's one of those things. I'm glad that it hasn't worked out that way,
Yeah, but the question is, I guess, who's doing it?
Well, it's not one person, from what I understand. There have been some people. There were some, as Billy describes one of the attempts in the film. I think it's a really interesting thing. He shows you the road and the bullet hole through the book and everything. This is a fascinating piece for us when we were there doing it. There were some people who were just individuals who were very religious, and the information in this case is so heretical it will upset the core of any religious belief system. And there were individuals who came after him for that. It is also said that there were certain parties, connected to certain intelligence groups or even neo-Nazi groups who targeted him as well. But his protection has been fairly good, both from the ETs and his friends who are around him and his own wits. And he happens to be a crack shot with a pistol. That whole scene in the film where he goes through the gun cabinet, that blew people's minds. They're not pacifists over there.
All right. Well, we're going to go back to the phones. William on our West of the Rockies line. You're calling from Oakland. You've been hanging on a long time. Thanks for your patience. What's on your mind?
Thank you, sir. I'm honored to be able to ask my question and have it go out into the cosmos here. And I appreciate the radio station and everything. I don't know what else to say about that. I'm listening on KSFL 560 in Oakland, California. My question is who am I praying to if I pray to, let's say, Jehovah or God or whatnot? Also, it's a great question about the assassination attempts. I mean, I'm sure they could wipe something on a doorknob or whatever. Also, my last question would be if these things aren't going to do anything until about 700 years from now, how does that help us now? I'll listen to my question off the air. Thank you.
All good questions there, William. That first one about who are we praying to is pretty good.
Well, this is good. This is why the case is so heretical. This is why the Talmud Emmanuel causes a lot of grief, cost the lives of Issa Rashid and his family, many times almost cost the life of Meier. And here's the core of it. What they are saying is this. All of the gods of all the religions were, with the exception of more pantheistic nature spirit type of situations, were humans who were here representing themselves as the creation. That's the term that they give to this universe. So when Meier was asking about, well, is there a God? They said, well, it's actually bigger than that, because God is about these people. And even in Ezekiel and other things, cave drawings, you can see these illustrations and descriptions of craft, not that much different from the Meier photos. What they said is this: we live in a universe that is a living consciousness. It is the source of all that exists within this universe. It is the ultimate intelligence, the source of all love and consciousness, understanding and wisdom, mercy, all attributes. And it creates all that exists within this universe according to immutable laws. It sets everything in motion, just like we live on this little speck of cosmic lint floating perfectly in space while we trample over each other thinking we can have dominion over each other in our world. Nonetheless, the creation has given life to all things, but especially human beings carry within them an immortal human spirit. It is that which is a piece of the creation itself that is that substance, or that substanceless substance, that each new incarnation that a person has, because they say we have millions and millions, the spirit comes in and evolves in each individual lifetime over billions of years for the purpose of re-entering into this cosmos of creation itself. And that's like the Cliff Notes version of it, and I can't tell you that I understand it much better.
Well, it's not necessarily at odds with the major religions, then, if you think about it in that way. Maybe it needs a little tweaking in terms of being completely consistent, but not at odds.
Well, they
all.
say largely because of a number of things. Number one, it is not a personality. There is no he involved. It doesn't take sides in wars or football games. It doesn't have a chosen people, only begotten son, or solitary prophet. It gives free will, but it has created immutable laws, so it does not need to be prayed to, because the creation doesn't need to be reminded that you stubbed your toe or drove your car into a fire hydrant. The creation allows us to work out our lives, and as we evolve day by day, struggling and making mistakes, we learn how life works. And we don't need to live in fear. We don't need to worry about a salvation or begging to a deity or any of this stuff, because if we turn within ourselves and implore that our own spirits awaken and lead us in accordance with the highest level of truth and love and justice, we will evolve according to what the Pleiaren are saying is the purpose of life. But we must take that responsibility, no outside deity.
I guess that sort of answers William's last question there about how are they helping us if they're not coming here for 700 years?
Right. The help, well, to tweak that maybe a little bit, the help is in the information as to how we can live, how we can settle down and get rid of things like terrorism and wars, how we can create a more equitable world, how we can balance our materialism and our technology with spiritual development, and how we can be better stewards of our environment in practical ways. Some of the stuff is not new, but some of it is, and some of it will make people very uncomfortable, because you could be liberal or conservative, highly religious or an atheist, and you'll find things that you resonate with and things that you think are absolutely terrible, such as the abortion issue that we speak about in the film. I mean, there's so many things here that are thought-provoking that if people start to dig into it for themselves, they've got a lifelong study, and they don't have to join anything, believe in a darn thing at all. They don't have to be worshiping or following anybody. It's an inside job.
Well, you better watch out saying stuff like that. There'll be some assassination attempts on you. We're going to go back to the phones. Our first-time caller line, James, is calling in this morning from Fort Collins, Colorado. Good morning, James.
Good morning. This is an interesting topic, and I admire Coast to Coast. I've listened for George Norrie and Art, and all you guys are very professional. You're out there putting out the word as to what needs to be done, not to be done. Very, very informative as to what the secular world should be aware of. But the thing is, we need to have it put out there more informative in the newspapers and in USA Today, to where everybody can get a hold of this information, not just the